Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of our Excel College podcast, the Excel College podcast, not
The
our
Excel College
podcast. Yeah. I'm your host Andrew Chambers, and joined by my co-host
Isaiah Schmidt.
Schmidt.
Hey.
We should do that.
What's that?
Schmidt. No.
Chambers.
Let's
what are you
go.
trying to do?
Yeah, I don't know. We're always playing with new intros around here, and then we have Cassadie back on,
What's up?
who needs no introduction because
Yep.
Cass is a familiar face,
Hello.
Our module expert.
our module expert.
Oh,
And today we're talking about sociology.
Sociology, yeah.
Sociology.
Yep. So the flow of the module so far,
Yeah.
I'm going to turn it over to Cass since she's the expert in it.
let's
Put her
go.
to the test. What you got, Cass? Lightning round.
So we just did. Y'all just came out of the podcast talking about anthropology. And Hawk did an amazing overview in that one.
That's a tough follow.
If
No
you want
pressure.
to go listen to that, I'm not even going to go into that much detail. But the anthropology podcast is a great overview up until then. And so just the like super sky high overview of where we've gone, or where we've been before, is we start in critical thinking.
Mm-hmm.
We ask the question of what is truth. We go into theology. We ask the question of who or what is ultimate reality. Then we move into philosophy, and we ask life's four biggest questions and how we can wisely answer those four big questions.
Nice.
That's where all the existentialism comes in.
What is the meaning of life?
Yeah.
That's not one of the questions we asked, though, is it?
No, but the meaning of life is like those four questions.
Why did that? Okay. Yeah.
Anyway.
Nice. Okay, keep going.
Where did I stop? Philosophy?
Philosophy? Yeah.
And then
Philosophy,
mathematics.
Yeah.
And there's really it's just math. Not like
It's just
you know
math.
it.
It's just math.
There's no like, there are questions,
Yeah.
but the whole point of math is like the bridge from these super transcendent, abstract concepts
Yeah.
like theology and philosophy, and you cross the bridge of mathematics into the immanent, which leads you into physics and talking about the universe, the multicosmic, microcosmic? Nope, macrocosmic, motocosmic, and microcosmic universe.
Dang, you're killing it right now.
And then you move into, gosh, I loved that module. Anyway, then you move into biology, and you talk about the study of life and
Origins.
the origin of life,
Yeah.
oranges. And then you move into anthropology, and you talk about a specific type of life on Earth, which would be human and humankind. And you study man and ask the question of what is man?
Yeah.
Is he a beast?
No,
See if
stop it. He's not a beast. He's
Yeah.
not an animal.
Sad animal.
And then you move into the more specific, nuanced study of, okay, now we have a grasp on what man is. Now, what is like his functionality? How does he operate in society?
And that's what sociology is.
Sociology.
So we know what man is. Now, how does he operate?
Yeah.
Question mark? Or how does he operate together?
How does he operate? Yeah. With
Okay.
fellow man.
Okay. Nice.
Man with man. We kicked that module off by doing a bit of a thought experiment.
Okay.
I
What is
think
it?
it's like day one of the module, maybe. It's called the Deserted Island Experiment.
Yeah,
Or
except
simulation. I always
can we
stumble
pause
over those.
here?
Yeah.
Oh,
so
yeah.
our guest can leave, our host actually.
Oh. Laura, say hello to everyone.
Hi, bye.
That's Laura Smith. She's our hostess extraordinaire.
She's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yes.
She lives in the
Muffins,
podcast
coffee.
studio. It's so weird.
Whoa, wild.
Rude of her to have a bedroom in our podcast studio.
In a kitchen, in a living room.
Yeah.
Very aesthetically pleasing though.
We all freeze.
No, we're good. This is good. They need to know how life is around here.
Yeah.
So,
Hey, we do
yeah.
live.
You want to stick your face in there and say hi?
So we
Thought
kicked
experiment, yeah.
that.
Oh, yeah.
We kicked that module off with the Deserted Island experiment
Can we
simulation.
do this, the three of us?
We could, yeah. Essentially.
How does it work? I mean, I
Do
was
we have enough people to do? I guess we do.
Yeah.
we could bring
You
somebody in if we need
Yeah,
to.
you divide up into like groups of 4 or 5, so
Yeah.
it's pretty close.
So we bring somebody in?
Sure, if you're feeling it.
Sage, do you want to get in? Do this
Sage.
thought experiment? Yeah.
Cool.
Amazing. She got it.
Our director, producer extraordinaire, Sage.
Nice.
Strangey,
Sage.
Sagey. On Instagram. Tag her. What's your TikTok?
Well,
notes?
we could simulate the whole thing, or we could just see some highlights
oh yeah,
from their groups.
Yeah,
I know you guys
yeah.
did it pretty recently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But essentially, the idea of the experiment is that you're stranded on an island.
Okay. Sounds
Think-
terrible.
Deserted island.
Like
Yeah, deserted island.
Uninhabitable.
what's his face? Tom
Lost-
Hanks
oh.
style.
Tom Hanks style.
Yeah.
Yep. Except there's a bunch
But
of you,
Wilson
not just
is a
man in a
person.
volleyball.
Wilson's a person. Okay.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them.
Tom Hanks
and
was a person too.
it's like, what do you do first? What do you do first? That's just the natural progression. What do you do first? That's kind of like the question. What happens? I don't even know what the exact question is.
Yeah, so
You organize, right? Is that what you?
well, the whole point is like, okay, you're on a deserted island, figure it out.
Yeah. Okay.
And so we split up into groups, and we were like, okay, how do we like survival? We've just been stranded on an island. There's like, I think they told us our boat wrecked, and
Yeah.
so we kind of had a point person in our group. I was not the point person, but essentially we were like, okay, this is like triage. Like, we're in survival mode. We got to figure out how we're gonna like survive the night. Our thought was, okay, maybe we'll still be rescued. Like, we just need really immediate things. Are there injuries? Is there water? Like, very basic things. We weren't like, during the day we were like, okay, let's go like scavenge the shipwreck to see if there's supplies, like food and stuff. And then as time went on, we realized we're gonna have to spend the night here. There's really no way off this island, and so let's build shelter and all of that stuff. And so that's kind of where we started of like, okay, so like somebody go build shelter, somebody go find water, somebody be in charge of food, and then somebody be in charge of like scavenging the shipwreck.
Who's
really
telling everyone to do this? Or
our like the groups discussed,
okay.
and then kind of it just like
Yeah,
it
I mean-
fell into skill set really.
Yeah.
It's like we had a paramedic in our group who was like really good with emergencies, and so he was our point person of like, he was telling everybody, he was like, okay, who wants to be in charge of this? And then somebody would like raise their hand and be like, well, I'm pretty good at this.
Okay.
So
Nice.
I know that paramedic.
yeah, he's pretty great.
But that's, you say,
Why are
who's,
you blushing when we're talking about the paramedic?
what is it about this paramedic? Anyway, that's, you brought up who's telling who what to do.
Yeah.
That's actually one of the interesting points. Sorry, Sage, we brought you in.
No, I was
Feel
like,
free to
Trace,
contribute whenever.
Trace to be here.
But it is that question of, and maybe you could fill in a little bit of, how do we structure authority systems, and who do we choose for leaders? Is it a group of leaders? Is it a singular individual?
Right. Because there's
Do
no
we-
rules. Like, you're on the island.
Yeah. When it comes to decision making, you're talking about more this abstract thing of power. Like, you're talking about the abstract thing of power in a tangible way as decision making. Who gets that power? Do you spread it out, or do you concentrate it into one being? What's the danger of one being, and what's the danger of spreading it out? Which totally sets us up for the government module next. But we'll
Interesting.
get into. But the whole reason we do this simulation is like, you naturally just start to see like the society starting to form.
Wow.
And the normal problems that just start to come up. But would love to hear, even in terms of that power discussion, like, what did you guys see there?
Yeah, the biggest thing I noticed and that stuck out to me was
love
that
these new
with
mics.
great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah.
That aspect of like, yes, power can corrupt and all these things. Like, who's the leader? Who has the skills for leadership? But along with that is like this really weighty responsibility. And when I feel like if that is taken like at its like a good value responsibility, then like ideally, because my thought is like, I don't want to put someone in power that's gonna abuse it or manipulate it. And if you see someone who is using their leadership skills in a responsible way and understands the depth of responsibility and leadership, then yeah.
So did you guys, like, as a group, so, I mean, the island scenario. So did you, as a group, say, okay, we want this person to be in charge, or did somebody just take charge, or, like, how did that work?
My group voted, and
Really?
it was so interesting too to realize that we all wanted leadership. Like, we all realized there was a need for like
Wow.
structure in order for us to,
Wow.
once our group realized, oh, we're here for like, we went through like the first 3 days of like, this is emergency and we think we're still going to be rescued. And then as time progressed, we went on to like, okay, what's our 2-week plan? What's our 3-week plan? What's our month
Wow.
plan?
Wow.
And it was like, oh, we actually are going to have to like live here and act like this is our new society.
Wow.
And so
Yeah.
as we realized that, we were
Yeah.
like, we need structure. We need
Yeah.
like some form of like government
Huh.
or leadership.
Huh.
and we didn't have like a leader, but we called them, I think, fire council meetings, where like our little group would meet back up, I think twice a week. And
Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Yeah, Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Wow.
We have dinner and fellowship and worship.
That's
Anyway.
a long methodical. How many months did this go on for?
But we would meet up twice a week and like give each other a rundown of like, okay, this is what happened.
Wow.
Is anybody struggling mentally? Because if somebody's struggling mentally, there's so few of us, it will affect all of us.
Yeah.
And could be fatal in
Wow.
life or death for the rest of us.
Yeah.
And so
we should
like-
kill them off, obviously. If they're
no.
no. Oh.
But we also voted on somebody who like, our group is so small that we were like, okay, we can all make decisions together and have it be an actual council. But if there's not unanimous agreement, then we appointed somebody to be our point person of like, she makes the final decision.
Wow.
And
Wow.
if we can't agree on something, she is the one we trust to make an unbiased,
Wow.
objective, like,
I mean, so you had to
Best
have
for the
like
group.
real.
yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
We called her Sheriff Sarah.
So if we're thinking from a governmental standpoint, you chose a democratic form of government essentially with a.
Pretty much. It's
Yeah.
really hard to like put
Yeah.
modern forms of government because
Yeah.
there were so little people.
Yeah.
That it was like everybody was part
Yeah.
of it, but also
Yeah.
not. And
You
like
designed a
also-
way to govern yourselves with like checks and balances. And,
Yeah.
Wow.
It was very interesting. But
Yeah.
what I like, it blew my mind, and I didn't realize this until everybody came back, and there was this like common theme, but we all naturally wanted it. Like we all viewed it as like, one, we have to stay together. Nobody was like, let's all split up and fend for yourselves. Everybody came together as a team.
Yeah.
And two, everybody realized that in order for us to survive, we have to have structure. Otherwise,
Wow.
chaos will kill us.
Wow.
And it was like, that was a common, like, the groups didn't interdiscuss, but every group had some form, some shape or form,
Yeah.
you know? And it was
Wow.
it was wild to realize that pattern of like, this is actually just a human thing
Wow.
of
Wow.
survival.
Wow. So essentially, like, if there's a group of people together, there is a desire for leadership and organization
Yeah.
in order to be able to thrive.
Yep.
Wow.
I think we recognize that we want collaboration, we want relationability.
Yeah.
Like we know that by ourselves we're not gonna.
Wow.
Right.
I wouldn't want to survive on an island
No.
by myself.
Well, I don't have the skills to.
Yeah.
Like we had
Yeah.
people in the group that had
Yeah.
different skills, and
Yeah.
I was like, I would like them on my team, please,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I don't know how to hunt. Like I
Yeah.
don't know how like wilderness skills. Like I'm just not. I grew up in the city. Like I don't know those things, but I want to live,
Wow.
preferably.
It's like those four oh yeah, sure.
Thank you,
Okay.
Sage.
Thanks, Sage.
Yeah.
It does frame the whole module in the 4 weeks of the module, which first is formal organization.
organization.
So
Okay.
it's this idea of like, we're going to formally organize. We're going to come together, and it's not going to be totally chaotic and lawless.
Yeah, yeah.
We're actually going to come together in a formal way, and we can't even help ourselves.
Wow.
Maybe it's part of our nature.
Wow.
Right.
So it's like, and we're always going to prefer that. We're going to enter into
Wow.
a contract, or
Yep.
we don't get to contracts yet, but we're going to enter into a group
society,
idea,
yeah.
society with a group goal, which is not just survival. Well, maybe it starts with survival, but eventually it's like,
Flourishing.
if we don't have any sort
Right.
of idea of rescue,
Yeah.
we're going to be taken off the island.
Yeah.
Then we don't want just survival. We want to actually set up
Wow.
a system that's going to help our
Thrive here on the
grandchildren.
island.
We want to live,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
just be like constantly scavenging or constantly in survival mode.
Wow.
At some point, you have to leave that survival mode and recognize, oh, this is like
Yeah.
Wow.
civilization now.
Wow.
And then the next week, which is
Hierarchical stratification.
Yep.
It was a really
Hierarchical
fun
What on
word.
earth does that mean?
It means, like, I keep thinking of rocks, like the stratification of rocks, which really ends
Yeah.
up looking like layers,
Uh-huh.
but it is this like functional layering of the organization,
Wow.
which can look a lot like different roles at different levels of authority
Okay. Wow.
and functionality
Wow.
in society. So it's
Yeah.
like, okay, not everybody is going to have that final decision making role,
Uh-huh.
but one person is. That's
Right.
part of hierarchical stratification.
Uh-huh.
Like one person is going to have more authority
Yeah.
in this for the sake of like progress and for the sake of moving forward. And so during while we talk about hierarchical stratification, we actually end up talking about role distinctions in marriage.
Wow. Oh, okay.
That's
which
right.
is wild.
Yeah.
How did that go?
It went really well. It was a very like tense, sensitive subject because I think a lot of us had all of us had past experiences, whether negative or positive or neutral, with role distinctions in marriage, whether we realized it or not, as like a function of that, or that would affect our view of that. But the conversations were very honoring of what those experiences could have been. And it actually was very beautiful, at least for me personally. I came out of that discussion having this realization that I, even in marriage, crave this type of structure and crave this type of organization. And it doesn't have to be a bad thing. It can definitely be abused. Like anything with authority can be abused, just like on the island scenario.
Yeah.
Our final decision maker could definitely abuse that power. Be like, start to like overimpose the authority we have submitted to her on us. And so the same thing in marriage, but it was a really interesting conversation.
Wow.
Even to put it under hierarchical stratification, which I don't think I would have made that connection in my head.
Right.
Yeah. We bring up this idea of like, if I remember correctly, and the whole marriage and honeymoon, I missed a lot of the module just this last year around.
Yeah, because you're on your honeymoon.
But I do remember at least
You were
in
living
previous,
out.
Ironically,
living out in previous cohorts, the discussion of like, does a higher role, because hierarchy is all about, literally you can even just think of sedimentary rocks where one thing is naturally above another.
Right.
One thing is above another. That's just how it forms. But is it actually a difference in role? Does role distinction actually equate a difference of importance or value? Or value, which is a huge thing. Yeah.
It was massive. And it's
huge.
not.
Wow.
Like it's role distinction in anything was not designed to be because of value. Like we didn't value this one person more and so gave her more authority. It was, no, this is purely for function. Like it is for forward movement and for progress and for the sake of like actually harmony and being able to flow with one another and flow in society and harmonize together. But that doesn't mean like, we talk about this a lot, but you have to start with the unity. Like you have to start with the equality and the unity and the sameness in value, because everybody starts there. Every human being starts there.
Right.
You have the same dignity. We talk about that in anthropology, which is I think why we start here in sociology. But you start with dignity because everybody has that, and everybody is equal in the eyes of God with their value.
Yeah.
Role distinction in anything is not a reflection of that.
Yeah. Well, let's camp there for a second and like make it like super practical. So I think like, because modern day where we're at now, people will hear that there are different hierarchical roles and they'll definitely associate value with that. So like we were talking about the CEO thing yesterday. Like there's a movement now that like the person working behind the counter should be making the same money as a CEO at a company. And like they're equal in value. It's like, well, they're totally equal in value as humans.
Totally.
But like as roles in the company, like the CEO has way greater responsibility. He has, like, so he should be compensated for that, But I do think a lot of people get confused between that hierarchy, like the value as a human being and hierarchy. Like even the roles of man and a woman in marriage, like.
Right. Well, and it starts with identity, right? And people asking the question, who am I? What am I? Which is why we place anthropology before sociology, because you cannot answer these questions unbiased and with a right view if you are still tying your identity to things that you're not actually supposed to tie your identity to.
Yeah.
So what you are is dignified. What you are is in the image of God.
Yeah.
That is your identity.
Yeah.
Your role distinction, your status in society, your job description, that is not your identity.
Not your identity. Right.
Your role as a wife or a husband, that's not your identity.
Wow.
So huge.
Yeah. Like and I think with the marriage thing, something I've like thought about for a long time, because like there's that question of like, man and the wife. Like there's that, wives submit to your husbands, and like husbands love your wives like wives. And that's like, for a lot of people, that's kind of triggering,
It's the Mufasa word.
It's Mufasa. Like, submit,
Austin Smith.
But like, if we talk about, I think Sage said this earlier about responsibility and power equals responsibility.
Yeah.
And so like in that, especially like in the Christian view of marriage, is like, yes, wives submit to your husband, but husbands love your wives like Christ loved the church and gave himself for her. So the husband actually is like has a greater responsibility, but a greater call to die than the woman does. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because Christ died for his church. Like a literal, like there's more of a demand, I think, for submission on the husband because he's actually having to submit unto death.
Right.
Wow.
In order to love his wife.
Like pour himself out.
Pour him
to the point of death, even death on a cross.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think if people understood that, there wouldn't be this like kind of Mufasa around it.
So good.
But I think too that like that also comes with experience, and like anything, like a CEO can abuse power in an organization. Like that also gets abused. And so that like I even had things that I didn't realize, and it wasn't in any of my own experiences. It was like a third person view of things that I had seen in other people, where the man did not, respect that call to submit. Yeah. But called the wife to submit. And I was like, meh.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, there's a real, like, real kind of experiences that I think will cause some people to pendulum swing. It's like, okay, I've seen this done wrongly. Wow. So like, I just don't want it.
Well, and I think that's why the like movement for equality, like I think that's why there's this like huge cry for we want equality, both in like the feminist movement, but that can get pretty radical. That like far side of the feminist movement, and even the like far side of the economic equality movement of like everything needs to be equal.
Yeah. Like the worker movement. We were talking about this yesterday.
Right.
And I think it's a reaction to like there has been a like history of like maybe corporate abuse or like corporations like taking advantage of employees and that kind of stuff.
Right.
And so now it's the like, okay, employees are gonna rule, and that's what we're seeing right now.
Yeah.
But the question is like, instead of when you see abuse, instead of throwing it out, is the answer instead of throwing it out just to restore right use? You see what I'm saying? Like Rob Reamer talked about that at my World Race Training Camp a long time. Like when we see something abused, like our tendency is to like throw it away and say, I don't want to see that again. Instead of like, no, this needs to be put back in the right order.
Right. Yeah. I think that's what the conversation brought up for me, was this like, it just like kept unpacking to the point where I got to the base of it. And I was like, I actually still think that this is good. Like I still think that this is right. As far as like role distinctions go, I see how it is about function and how it's not about value. It's about actually something really beautiful and fluid and dynamic, and creates this like this shalom and this harmony. And yes, it's been cracked and broken and bruised, but there's like so much healing that is possible. Yeah. And it is about restoration more than anything.
So good.
Yeah, you're really highlighting even just the critical thinking method that you were taught in the beginning, and even when you're using the word unpacking. And earlier you said too, this isn't something even from my own experience, but it was something that I'd experienced third person, or like by virtue of a friend or by virtue of someone that's close to you. And even that, just observation or a third person experience caused you to have this conclusion that you don't even know you had. Where did I even get it from? How do I have it? And then it's this unpacking. Oh wow, actually, this is a fear of, what you're saying, fear of corruption, of like the idea of hierarchies automatically always are this oppressor and oppressed,
right?
Versus that's not the case. What if it's just a role responsibility, and we don't always just equate oppressor and oppressed, which is the knee-jerk reaction to a lot of people. Like the emotional knee-jerk reaction to hierarchical stratification is always going to be oppressor and oppressed.
Interesting.
Necessary evil. Yeah.
Well, and you see this too as like, I don't know, the example keeps getting brought up of today. You see that there are like employee shortages everywhere in like the fast food restaurants, even normal restaurants. A lot of the like trade jobs that you see, like electricians and plumbing and all of that. Like there's just a shortage everywhere because there really wasn't a need to work during COVID, because a lot of people lost their jobs, but then even after COVID, as the compensation kept rolling out, people just stopped working and then didn't want to work those jobs because they didn't need to work those jobs.
Right.
And that's a whole other discussion. But it led to this kind of like collapse of these, what would be viewed as like the lower level layers of the stratification. And it's causing like prices to skyrocket, and
it's economic disruption.
And it disrupted the flow, and it disrupted the harmony. And now you see like there's struggles and impacts in places that you probably wouldn't even expect it to impact. And I just think it does create this beauty in seeing everything as like a responsibility, and everything as an authority, and everything as something that actually feeds into something way bigger than just
that's amazing.
your role.
Well, and I think with that too, like with those lower jobs that you were talking, lower jobs. One thing in my mind is like, who are part of the problem is we create this narrative around that's a lower job. Like creating burgers at McDonald's is not necessarily a lower job, unless we make it that. Now, is it at the rate of pay that they can afford to pay? Is it a job that's going to take you into like marriage and family and help provide for that? No, but like, it could be a great dignified job,
Right.
And you can make, like, my favorite thing in the world is one time I literally walked into Arby's and the lady walking behind the cashier was like the happiest human alive. Was stoked to be there, and I was like, "You're amazing." And like yes, those can be terrible jobs. Like if you create bad work environments, and like, but so can any corporate job that's paying like 5 times as much.
Right. I know so many like successful, quote unquote. Sorry, I keep doing air quotes because there's a video, but I realize there's also it's just going to be a podcast. But there's also a lot of successful people that I know that are miserable.
Totally.
And we create this narrative of like, oh, if I could only just have this like high level whatever, this perfect thing, then my life would be
totally
great.
Well, it's like, as a society, we have assigned your self-worth to be reflected by your net worth, essentially.
Wow. That's good.
And so like when someone is in a job that's lower paying, and so they can afford a smaller house, and like they maybe don't have to eat at all the same places, and like their car's not as nice, like we say, okay, you have less value now. Whereas like that shouldn't be the case.
Right.
And I think we've actually like Isaiah was talking about, like that oppressor and oppressed thing. Like we've created that narrative around like, you make less money, so you're oppressed.
Oof.
And I don't think that has to be true.
Yeah.
It's a status game.
It's a status game.
Which is a lose-lose game.
Which is a lose for everyone.
Everyone.
All the time.
Because once the oppressor once the oppressed like kind of fights their way to the top, then they end up becoming
the oppressor,
and then just have, and
it's a vicious cycle.
I think if people like really understood like what was happening there,
it's all just a function.
Yeah. It's like, what if we gave great dignity to somebody that was like making burgers at McDonald's?
Dude, I got paid started off at $9 an hour, which is like $1 above minimum wage in Texas, as a cashier at Marshall's.
Nice.
And there were definitely days where I was like, this kind of is like boring and hard. It was actually really hard. But I loved being able to interact with people, and loved being able to like conversate with them and have personal interaction, which is hilarious because I'm an introvert. But there were days that I like, very often I enjoyed what I did, and I enjoyed it because I got to interact with people and had regulars that would come in, and like I like talked to them about their life, and like they did this with my sister, she worked there before me, but like they would also bring in like treats that they would make for us.
That's amazing.
They were always like, you like make our day every time we come in here. We could be having the worst day, and you can say something as a cashier in the 3 minutes that I interact with you that changes my whole day.
Amazing.
That gave my job so much meaning.
Totally.
I was like, I don't have to be like some philanthropist or whatever, like doing some great big thing on a big platform to make a huge difference in somebody's day, which might make a difference in their life or their outlook on life.
Totally.
And that ended up getting me like a promotion into customer experience coordinator.
Yeah.
And like a bump in pay.
There you go.
You know, and so
Yeah.
it's like actually you get to choose, you know, how you're going to view your status.
You get to choose the value
or your
of your
distinction.
job.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you
Yeah.
bring value into your job, you're going to pour out value onto others, no matter what level you're at, you know?
Yeah. Well, when I first moved here, before I was doing work with the college, me and Matt and Josh Glover.
A lunch lady.
We're working the buffet line at Ridgecrest Conference Center.
Yeah.
And we would walk in at 5:00 in the morning for the breakfast shift, and everybody's like kind of just, you know, not happy to be there. And we're walking in going, let's go! Like, just like stoked for the day. Now, it only paid $11 an hour and I only got so many hours. So, like, as I got married and had a family, that wasn't a sustainable job anymore.
Right.
But the job totally had dignity and value when we were there. And we refused to let it not.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
And you can tie that back to the deserted island scenario again, easily, with even just the status thing.
Yeah.
Like if you're on that deserted island, say there's 6 people, and each person is going to actually have to carry a lot of weight.
Yeah.
And you're totally concerned with who actually or the status position or the status role of one person or another. And it's like, well, I actually want to have this role because of how it looks to my peers, or I actually want to have this role because I cannot work that role.
Yeah.
Not because of skill set, but because of maybe appearance or optics or any of those things. Versus like, we got to not just survive, but we have to establish like I got to pull my weight. I got to pull my weight.
Totally.
It's such a small scenario that you can zoom out big time to real life. That if it's like, I can't work that job. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I would never work that job.
Totally.
It's like, what do you mean? Why?
Yeah.
Well, because I mean, dude, that job, cleaning toilets. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
It's like,
Do you realize how nasty our toilets be and nobody cleaned them?
exactly.
You know?
Exactly. Yep.
Well, and I love, this goes into leadership, but I do love the example of like servant leadership. And because a leader or like a CEO has so much responsibility, they also have the responsibility to come back down, quote unquote,
Yeah.
and support the people in the operational
Totally.
jobs,
Yeah.
the people that are cleaning the toilets and the people that are working the register and doing all the paperwork that they might not ever interact with if they weren't intentional about coming down and like being like, hey, I started here, or like, hey, I even just recognize that your job is just as important as mine, and this business would not run without you.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing in marriage and in friendships and in mentorship relationships and
Totally.
work dynamics. Like,
Yep.
Oh, that's amazing.
And the seeds, what you're talking about right now, are the seeds that are planted in sociology that in government come up as charity and grace towards our governmental figures, like
Yep.
political figures, that suddenly you have a new level of like, maybe going back to the critical thinking method.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't quite understand.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm skipping the understanding portion of the method and going right to evaluation.
Yeah.
The government module, which we'll get into at a later episode, is all about, or one of the biggest takeaways for me at least, is like this new level of grace, or even like maybe I don't even understand. Maybe I'm just like so caught up in the emotional whirlwind of political banter and people all vying for my vote and vying for my opinions. And literally bartering to get for me to join their side, essentially.
Yeah.
Maybe I've played into that game more than I think. And maybe there are actually people out there not concerned about status, but concerned about true wealth, like the prosperity of the nation and people. And I don't know.
Yeah.
But what you're describing there is like in sociology, these seeds are planted.
Yeah.
That in government, they come up as
I
like,
can totally see that. Yeah.
it's awesome.
well, because government is supposed to be this representation or this reflection of the people
Wow.
in relationship with one another, in community together, like functioning in a society. The government is just this like, not zoomed out, but like this blown up
Image of it.
image of it.
Wow.
Which is the 4th week of sociology, right?
Yeah, legal protection.
The legal
Okay.
protection of selves in society.
Yeah.
That's where governing comes in.
That's how we make that transition.
So we start asking like, what role does the government have in like religion and in
Okay.
marriage?
Okay.
And
Do we answer those in sociology, or do you have to stay tuned for government?
we definitely conclude
Yeah.
sociology with them.
Legal protection from what is the question of the final week 4 of sociology is legal protection of selves in society.
Yeah.
Legal protection from what? From each other, from ourselves.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
What if I'm actually to have my own
Yeah.
or have any sort of semblance of private property and to own something as my own thing?
Wow.
Like, is there a way to actually come into a community of people and set up some sort of social contract that we can all agree upon, that now I can actually, I've started to use this expression a bit, but like I can sit with my back to the door, knowing that I can sit with my back to the door knowing I have to protect my home, but I'm not alone. Actually, the government's providing me protection for my own home in the form of law, in the form of enforcement of the law, in the form of a lot of things, even social stigmas, but things like that. Like I can sit with my back to the door and I can practice, beautiful things, piano or arts or something like that.
Yeah.
But the legal protection of cells in society, that we can come together, agree on a contract.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm the only reason I'm smiling right now is because when you were talking about that legal protection of cells, I had this image of my granny. She passed last year, but she was a firecracker.
Yeah.
And so you have crosswalks, and like legally, you're not allowed to like hit a pedestrian crosswalk. Obviously, like you have to stop for a pedestrian crosswalk. So my granny one time, she like stepped out in the middle of the street without looking, and my dad was like, "Mama, you gotta look before you cross the street." And she was like, "It's illegal for them to hit me here." I just remember being like, that means they're not going to do it.
Yeah. I think they will try not to.
Yeah, but there'd be legal ramifications if they did,
Right.
Yeah, but also personal responsibility on her part of maybe looking.
Yeah.
We actually touched on that in the deserted island scenario. The deserted island scenario really does set up, and we don't know any of this when we're doing it. It's just like, we're on a deserted island. We know nothing outside of that. And then you go through the module and you're like, oh my gosh, we talked about this, about a very like hypothetical situation. But we ended up talking about, okay, if we want structure and we want to like thrive in society and such, we need some guidelines. Like, because people just can't, like, there's like 5 of us. We can't just go around like doing whatever the heck we want, because if somebody gets angry and like ends up killing somebody else, we're down a member. Like, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
And so we ended up coming up with, I guess you could call them quote unquote laws.
Yeah.
And they were actually, we call them values, because we were like, what do we value? Like what do we hold as truths on this island? And one of our first ones was, God exists here.
Wow.
Like, God is here. We need to remember that. And if that is true, then it leads to all these other things of like, we are going to choose unity over agreement. We're going to choose like prefer one another. We actually used a lot of Excel language because Excel has it, but
Excel also has a lot of values and virtues.
Yes. Yeah. Plug. Stay tuned. But I thought that was so neat, because so many times we're like, the laws are like constraining us, and we just want to like, why we don't we see them as like rules, and we're like, these are stupid. Like, I'm just gonna break them.
Right.
But
just guides to like help you live well.
Yes, there's this quote. I don't know who said it. It might have been Davis. Might have been a reading. But the quote is, "Laws are boundaries that keep our capabilities for destruction in check. Laws guide the good.
Whoa.
They give it a direction."
Wow.
Dang.
It was
so
really good.
It's probably a good place to stop.
Yeah. Great place. I think that sets us up well for the next episode.
Government
module.
No.
Yeah.
Government.
With, I think Andrew Hawk, right? Andrew Hawk's on the next episode.
Hockey.
And we got a cool announcement about what he's going to be doing this fall.
Let's go.
Government. Yeah.
Nice.
It's going to be cool. So, man, thank you guys so much for joining another episode of the Excel College Podcast. As always, you can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere podcasts are found. And you can watch full episodes of this.
Can you find us on Zune?
I have
Does Zune still exist?
Zune?
Napster. You can find us on Napster.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, you can download our episods off Pirates Bay or Livewire.
All right, so we love you guys,
Nope.
and we'll see you later. And Excel does not endorse the last few things that we said. Okay, all right.
All right.
Next time.